Finnish builder Quarken has had an amazing start to life with its award-winning 27-footer. But in January at the Düsseldorf Boat Show, it introduced a new flagship, and this is it. This is now boat number 4, but the first into the UK. This is the Quarken 35 cabin. For the most part, the ergonomics at the helm of this 35 cabin are really very impressive. Now for a start, we've got a twin helm seat. That moves forward and aft. It's a pretty stiff mechanism, but it's a brand new boat, of course, so that'll loosen up over time. And what I like is the fact that both seats are pretty large, and we also got individual bolsters, so you can actually adjust your position to your own specifications. We've also got a bit of adjustability here at the wheel, so that's quite handy, and we've got a little foot brace down below. But of course the real party trick here, the thing that sets it apart from most other boats in this sector, is this vast opening side door. I mean, look at the aperture there. It's absolutely massive. It's basically like open boating. And of course you've got direct access to a rail for tying off, and also to your cleat right there. So that's nice and simple. Not so simple on the other side, because that is a solid piece of glass. In the future there may be an option for a sliding window, so you can pop across to the port side, reach out and operate the cleat there. But as things stand, it's difficult to communicate with people on the port side, and difficult if you're single-handed to come along port side too. That said, as I say, the ergonomics of the helm itself are pretty good. We've got the main tier of the dash up here, and we've got the Yamaha display in the centre and a pair of MFDs. I think that's part of the premium package, certainly one of them. The other is an option in the premium package. They're 12 inches, and there's plenty of space for those. Compass on top. Lots of this kind of Nordic matte dash material that avoids blasting you in the eyes with lots of sunlight. It's been a sunny day today. It works pretty well. We've got the bow thruster here on our left-hand side, and that's variable speed. That's a posh bit of Sleipner kit, so you don't have to operate that at max chat and make it sound like you're strangling a cat when you come into a busy marina. And we've also got this little button on top that enables you to hold it at the right sort of pressure, so you can just pop the bow alongside again when you're single-handed and really make things easy on yourself. There's also an option for a joystick and a little plinth for it just here. That adds about 20 grand to the price, but realistically with your twin throttles and your thruster, there's not a great deal of need for the additional joystick, particularly as, despite the fact that this is a cabin boat, it's actually quite low profile. The windage is not that significant. What else we have here? A little bit of switchgear on the left-hand side and the fusion remote, and of course the zip weight controls and VHF down by our right hand. Now I'm in the bolster position as things stand, and it's pretty comfortable, but I have found my knee just knocking on this little bit of fiberglass here. That aside, I have to say it's a pretty good place to be. Fantastic visibility, partly because of this of course, but also because we have really narrow mullions around this screen, and also because we've got a reverse screen. It's inverted, so it begins a long way forward. It gives you loads of extra space, lots of extra visibility. Really good feature that. We will find, because this boat heels quite gamely, that when you're in a turn to port, visibility is quite difficult, because we only have a 4.5 sunroof rather than a transverse one. But there is the likelihood in the future of an optional all-over sunroof built into this hardtop, and we'll see the evidence of that later when we check out the mouldings on top of the roof. But what we want to do is get this boat underway, because the 27 was a really good driver's boat, and every bit as good in cabin form as T-top form, so I'm expecting really good things here too. Now, as I put the hammers down, there's a good bit of grunt, passing 20 knots already. I've got to say, there's not too much in the way of a bow up attitude at all. Plenty of visibility forward. Quite a nice natural trim. And if I give her a little bit of extra trim on those legs, just a couple of notches, the waterline shifts way back, and at between 30 and 35 knots, well we're drinking about 3 litres per nautical mile. That's not a lot. We've got a 700 litre fuel tank, so about 560 litres of available fuel. So we got a range at that sort of speed around about 185, 190 nautical miles. And if we increase that pace again, get ourselves up to 40 knots, even right through to 44 knots, 43, 44 knots. You discover that even then we're only drinking 4 litres per nautical mile. So you've still got a range in the region of 140 miles. And that's very good. That's certainly going to give you plenty of range for most family activities. And talking of family activities actually, the engine choice is an interesting conundrum. Now I'm going to swing around to starboard here. You see there's lots of lovely hill. I'll just trim her in a touch. There we go, loads of grip. But it's really novice friendly. I can trim her out a little bit as I'm going through that turn, and instead of tripping you up, there's just a nice little bit of slip dialed in just to ease down that aggression of that experience. Again, that's very novice friendly. But what we have here on this boat is a pair of Yamaha F300s, and that is good for about 46 knots at the top end. Pretty generous performance, you might say, but it's also available, I'm told, with a pair of 350s. Now on the face of it as a family boat, you might look at that and think, well, that's overkill, surely. What reason would you have for going more than 46 knots? But actually, I'm told these 350s will bring around about 51, 52 knots into play. They only add about 10 grand to the overall purchase price, which is only about 4%. And actually, they increase that most efficient cruising band to around about 34, 35, 36 knots. So in many ways, you might say it's false economy not to up the ante and increase the power. Well, that was a tremendous amount of fun. Very much the same order of experience as the original 27. And there are plenty of other similarities in terms of the design, the hull and the aesthetic, as you can see here. Now, if we move towards the bow, well, this is that plumb bow I was talking about, and this is that fine entry. I mean, you look at that, it's almost knife-like. That's what gives you your soft ride. But of course, we also have, in common with that 27, this really prodigious bow flare. It's really undercut. And we went through some slightly silly wakes and silly seas at silly speeds a couple of times during our photo shoot while we were out there. And not once did the water make its way inboard. And that's even when we had winds on the starboard beam and I had that door wide open, was expecting a little bit of water ingress. There was absolutely none. In terms of the aesthetic, of course, very distinctive. It basically looks like a 27, just maximised. So we've got the pilot house with that reverse windscreen. That looks really cool. We've got that flared bow we've talked about. We've also got these hull windows. Now on the 27, we've got a window and then a kind of aesthetic tinted panel, which is not a window at all. Well, here, because we have extra length, we've got a bedroom and we've got a settee. They're both genuine window sections. But as I say, exactly the same kind of aesthetic. Nice fat rubbing strake, lots of glass built into that pilot house structure. And when we get to the aft end, you'll see that the concept behind the cockpit, though similar, is more rewarding because you just have that bit more beam, that bit more space. So the boat we saw in Dusseldorf, that came with a wet bar up against the aft end of the pilot house. Well, not so here. For the UK market, we've got a bench and that faces across to a stern bench. So essentially very sociable kind of layout, easily seating for 6 here, but it's better because we have this feature. Now, this is a really good space saving kind of feature. On a lot of boats of this kind, particularly those that are rigged for fishing, you'll have a seat that will fold down from the bulwarks, but that of course creates a bit of ingress into your deck space. It blocks your companionways, and this is much better. So if I sit on this, I'm actually outboard of the gunnels here, so I don't block any access points from that swim platform. Everything stays nice and wide and open, and you get this on both sides as part of the standard package. So 2 people here, 2 people there, 3 here, 3 there. You can easily seat 10 people in this aft cockpit. There's a big table for the people in the centre, as you can see from these 2 receptacles down in the deck. We've also got these brackets here, again, one on either side, and these are for little individual table pods that you can sit here so the people outboard can still feel like they're part of that party. It's a really effective kind of layout, but it doesn't end there, because at the aft end, just by those swim platforms, we've got these lockers. Now, these are deliberately rigged as nice deep wet lockers. They're drained, so you can use this if you happen to be boating in Scandinavia for a stern anchor. You can also use it for fenders, obviously, or lines, anything wet that you want to chuck in there. But because they're drained, it's equally good just to fill these things with ice. Whack some beer or wine in there, and you're perfectly positioned to service all the people back here in the cockpit. We've also got a ladder on the starboard side that moves out telescopically, and because we've got the optional ski arch, it's easy to pull yourself out of the water on that starboard side. That's no problem at all. And in terms of the underdeck storage, well, that's pretty well taken care of too. Now we'll do the central section first. A couple of catches to lift that one up. And in here, well, it's nice and deep, it's nice and big, it's beautifully lined, and everything's tucked very neatly away. These are the legs for the table that we just pointed out in the centre of the deck here, neatly tucked away on their own bracket. This is the table with this right angled leg and this clever hinge that enables you to swing the tables on either side in whichever direction you like, so everyone can stay involved. Over here on the starboard side, beneath this hatch, where we got 4 batteries, AGM batteries, gel batteries, obviously a couple of starters for those F300s and a couple of domestic batteries too, very neatly tucked away again. Loads of space in here. Got some additional master volt gear under here for your electrics. And here on the port side, well, this little reservoir here, that's for your window washers. I don't know why. Boat designers and boat builders always seem to position the washer reservoir as far away from the windows as possible, but there we are, they seem to do it. I don't know why. It's been done again here. As on the 27, this pilot house is offset to port to create a nice, deep, safe and secure starboard side deck. So of course you get a narrower side deck elevated on the port side. It's good to see then that the access point to the pilot house involves a door that swings inward instead of outward, and that means even when you've got it secured open, you still get proper access up onto this port side deck. While I'm here, it's worth noting that there's no high level rail here to help you make your way up onto that side deck, so I'd like to see that amended on future models. And this is quite an interesting feature too, actually. If I open this up, you'll see that opens the aft end of this pilot house right out, makes you feel like quite an open boat. And I like this feature a lot. Trouble is, there are no catches to hold it open, so you're only able to use this when you're stationary. When you're at sea, when you're underway, you've got to close it up to keep it nice and stiff. So I'd like to see a workaround introduced there for future models. Now let's make our way over to the starboard side deck, the larger of the two. As we do so, worth taking a look at the storage again. We've got a couple of really big units here, fore and aft. Lots of space inside these bench seats. And when we get to that starboard side deck, well, this is really secure, exactly what you'd want. Really good for family boating. This is potentially a bit of an issue though. This is the runner for these big doors on the starboard side of the pilot house, and that's quite a hard, sharp edge. You wouldn't want to crack an ankle on that as you make your way from the cockpit forward to the bow. And when we get here, well, I've talked about the value in terms of seamanship of this huge flared bow up in the forepeak. It keeps you nice and dry and flings all the spray well wide. But it also really uprates the recreational versatility. So as on the 27, like I say, the overlap is substantial. It's so broad that you can factor in a proper anchor here and still use this as a genuine step through forepeak. So you can also opt for a ladder here to make things much easier in that regard. Inside the locker itself, well, because of that plumb bow, it's deep and it's big and it's cavernous. So it's really good to see that Quarken's introduced a little panel there, a divider, so you can use one side for storage and the other side for your chain and your line. And I also like this. Now, as I say, the beam comes a good way forward, and there's a really nice island sunbed here with a permanent backrest. It's not so massive that it gets in the way of this. This is a permanent skylight, a huge skylight to introduce loads of light down below, and that will never get blocked by your cushions. Now, this is great for 3 people to relax. You've got cup holders here, but if there's just 2 of you, this is even better. If I fold this back, well, the underside of this cushion, there's some rigidity to that, so you can actually use this as a central table for your food and your nibbles. cup holders outboard, this is a brilliant space for a couple of people just to escape the party back aft, come forward, take it easy with a glass of wine and feel like they've got a really intimate, private little space. If you're feeling more sociable, well, as I say, plenty of room for 3 people here. You can perch yourself on the leading edge here. There's another table fitting just like those in the cockpit, and this lovely big broad forepeak, well, that will seat another couple of people. So if need be, this is a decent little lounge for 5 people. Now, what I'm going to do is make my way back to that cockpit via this narrower elevated port side deck, because I want to have a quick word about the roof. Now, when we were at the Helm driving, we intimated that there might be the option of a huge sunroof on future models, and that would be a tremendous help on this boat, particularly in terms of visibility when you're turning to port. And if you look at the roof here, the evidence suggests that it's going to come. This looks to me like a wind deflector. This looks like a drainage channel, and these little gaps between mouldings here suggest to me that the sunroof will encompass an absolutely massive section of the hardtop, and that on a boat like this will be a major bonus. Now let's get ourselves into the saloon, because of course the inside of the pilot house is a really key element of a boat like this. What we'll do is open up that aft end just to give ourselves a little bit more air and a bit more light. And when you get in here, well, this is the reason that the UK importer has seen fit to trade the Showboat's wet bar in that cockpit for us to tea, because we got some decent little bits of galley equipment here, a decent sink, a 2-ring diesel hob, as I say, the diesel fillers just over there on that port side deck directly next to the tank. There's a bit of storage in here too, plus a bin, and I think we've got a little rack for wine bottles in there as well. So it's not particularly well spec'd, it's not particularly massive, but if you don't plan on doing a huge amount of cooking, it will certainly suffice. Let's slot this back in and pop the lid back down and move forward, because very often on boats like this, perhaps a boat like the Wellcraft 435 or the smaller Wellcraft 355, you have that port galley butting up against the co-pilot seat, and it leaves no real space for the passenger to relax and enjoy himself. Well, not so here. There's plenty of space at this co-pilot seat. Now, I've put myself in position. There's no adjustability, but there's so much space you don't really need it. I'm a 6-footer and I could spread out nicely. There's a well-placed grab handle here, a decent bit of storage, and this, incidentally, this shard of a champagne bottle, well, that is from last week's Portland Boat Show, where a nice bottle of bubbly was smashed against the anchor to welcome this boat into the UK for the first time. But unquestionably, the most exciting part of this saloon is on the starboard side. So let's swing the backrest of the helm bench over and take a little seat here. And what we have is an elevated dinette with loads of storage down inside here. That storage is a little compromised in the aft bench because the owners of this boat have chosen to spec a second fridge in there, but still storage is massive. And this central table, well, we've got a couple of brackets, one on either side, so you can fold out that leaf, hit a button on the port side and drop this telescopic leg. Use those infills in that aft space, create a really good, generous double berth for guests, an occasional double berth. The footrail here is fantastic too, really solid, good to look at, built from stainless steel, and it's exactly the right kind of height to give you maximum comfort when you're perching on these benches. But what I really like about this starboard dinette is the fact that these doors are more convertible than you might think. So we can close this forward one over. I can move aft, open this section up, slide these out again, perch myself in this back corner, and let me tell you, this is a fantastic place to sit. It's wide open aft, it's wide open on the starboard side. Even here, where you'd conventionally expect a big thick fiberglass mullion, well, there's a glass insert in there, so views are fantastic too. All in all, I'd say as dining stations on moderately sized pilot house boats go, this is an absolute beauty. The last place to look at then is, of course, the lower deck. and I think you might be quite impressed. Now when I get down here, you can see headroom's about, what, 5'8", I guess, but they've been very decent. They've coated the fiberglass with a nice thick spongy carpet lining, so you don't actually hurt yourself when you make your way down. And when you're down in here, actually, it's very comfortable indeed. We've got a nice big bench on the starboard side. Here's that additional window that I was talking about, the one that the 27 lacks. There's masses of light from that skylight we saw up on the foredeck. And actually this bench, though it's big enough for 3 people, it's a bit cleverer than you first think. So I'm famously bad at converting stuff, so if I can do it, then you know Quarken has done a great job. Let's have a go now. I'm making it much harder than it ought to be. So this bench opens straight out just like that, and there's a neat, thoughtful little strip that goes just in here. We don't have the Velcro fittings yet, it's a new boat, as I say. But that is not a bad bed at all. I'll stick myself this way so you can see the kind of perspective. With my feet on that aft bulkhead, well, that's just in excess of 6 feet, 6'2" maybe. It's not necessarily designed for 2 adults, but you could certainly accommodate them here. 2 kids certainly would be no problem at all. And what I really like is the fact that when you open it out, well, you don't need separate infills because the backrest is an integrated part of it. Now let's tuck this all away. There's a little bit of storage space in there. How does this go? There we are we there? I'm going to apologise to the guys at Quarken because I've seen this done. It's so much easier than I made it look. Now let's get these bits and bobs out of the way as well, because clearly we want to have a look at the main event down here, and that is this massive forward berth. Now that is huge. Conventionally I would tend to want to sleep with my head forward, but it feels like that is slightly downhill and of course tapered. So we'll go with the designer's implicit recommendation and put our heads near the reading lights. We've got the diesel heating here, fusion remote, USBs and an additional power point plus cup holders. And if I swing myself around there, well seriously, just look at the scale of this thing. It's absolutely massive. We've got super posh Lumitec lighting as well. If I come off the bed though, well, as you would anticipate, we've got the bow thruster and actually a calorifier forward, so there's not much use beneath the forward part of the bed. But if I just lift this, and I can just use a finger for that, it's so light. We've got massive storage spaces in here. Again, here are the hull sides, just shallowing there, going up at a V. Every spare inch is used. Good compartments on both sides and a massive deep one right here in the centre. I mean, look at the size of that. It's absolutely massive. Beautifully lined, easily accessed one-handed. Really useful stuff, that, if you fancy using this boat for a cruise. And then on the port side we have the heads compartment. Again, it's raised because we have the hull sides shallowing, and we need space beneath the deck, of course, for the pumps. So you can use this as a wet room. So clearly headroom's not a strength, but the footprint's decent. We've got a little seat that folds down over the loo, so you can grab your shower fitting, get your showering done. Bit of natural light there, bit of storage here. It's not posh, it's not massive, but it's very neatly fitted out in a Nordic sort of fashion, and it does everything you need for a good long weekend away. If you're as impressed with this boat as I have been, then you're probably wondering what the price is. Well, it starts from a base price, including VAT on the water, of £262,000. The high-spec boat you see here, the test boat we've taken out today, well, that comes in at around about £330,000 all in. Now, of course, I need to be relatively careful about what I say, because essentially that's a lot more than my house is worth. But in the context of the modern market, and given how capable this boat is, I would suggest that that is genuinely competitive value for money.